Florida State's off to a fast start with the offensive transfer portal needs, and there's also a great opportunity from in-state with the class of 2026.
You are Locked On Seminoles, your daily podcast on the Florida State Seminoles. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back into Locked On Seminoles. I am your host, Brian Smith. Thank you for making Locked On Seminoles your first listen each and every day. Truly appreciate you stopping in to talk some Noles with me. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL playoffs are almost here, but it's not too late to get in on the regular season action with FanDuel right now. New customers can finish this season strong with a $250 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Today's show is going to conclude with 3 questions from fans on the Locked On YouTube page, talking about the portal needs, things that Florida State needs to do. In the middle, the whole meat and potatoes of this podcast is going to go over the 2026 in-state offensive line recruits that the Noles can get. It is a magnificent class of offensive linemen inside the Sunshine State. Going to break them down and where they stand in their recruitments. And to begin, right now, we're going to discuss the most important thing. Florida State's off to a fast start. Who do they have? What are they still trying to do? And what are the needs? Let's start with that right here now. Number 1, Adrien Medley, offensive lineman from UCF, is in the fold. Offensive guard is the most likely spot for him to play at Florida State. I wouldn't be shocked if he could play center or play some tackle. He's a veteran guy. He's a grad student. Really good pickup for Florida State because of his versatility. And obviously, he's played with Herb Hand and, of course, Gus Malzahn as well, being at UCF. So it's a plug-and-play kind of situation. Secondarily, Gunnar Hansen, offensive tackle out of Vanderbilt. He played left tackle last season for the Commodores. That's a really good football player that I got to see live against Auburn. He can play at the SEC level, so we're pretty clear on what his capabilities are. I expect him to play right or left tackle. You need at least five in this class. But at the same time, getting 40% of that out of the gate before Christmas is a great start. In addition to that, and this podcast went up this morning here on Locked On Seminoles, Mr. Mikal Pettis is a player that Florida State recently hosted. He is from Ole Miss. Stephen Willis, the host of the Locked On Ole Miss podcast, came on. He knows about Pettis. He followed his recruitment. He is a religious follower of the Ole Miss program, knows pretty much everything that's going on there. And at one point, Stephen even worked in the Ole Miss football program. I think that it's pretty clear that he's a powerhouse. He's like 6'6", 6'7", 350. Stephen thinks he'll end up playing guard long-term, but he might play right tackle again at the college level. That podcast is up if you want to see it, but Florida State's in the hunt there, and that would be a really good addition to the Noles. Also, Onyenwe, the kid from Rice, is a possibility. Perry, the kid that came out of Central Connecticut State, he's a possibility. They both visited. We'll see where those go. But overall, I just want to make a basic statement here. Florida State is way, way ahead of the curve compared to where I thought they were going to be with the offensive line haul. And the reason I bring that up is you just brought in Herb Hand. Now, he's an experienced veteran coach. He's been at Texas and Auburn and Tulsa and all these different places. But he's a guy that just walked in the door, didn't know what to expect at Florida State. They've transitioned very, very well. They need 3 more linemen minimum. I'd prefer 4 if I could get it. But here is the extra part of that. Not all grad transfers. They need a few underclassmen that may not be ready to, quote unquote, play right away. That's cool because you got to balance your roster. They got 2 offensive linemen in the 25 class. There's nothing wrong with that. But, except for Mario Nash Jr., the other kid, I don't think is going to play right away. Nash could play some, but still, freshman offensive linemen don't tend to do real well at the P4 level right out the gate. Nash is kind of an exception. I think he's a little underrated, and I personally believe he's one of the better left tackles in the class of 25. I've seen him live at the Under Armour event up in the greater Atlanta area. He handled some of the best defensive linemen in the country, so he can play. But with that said, going back to the portal point, you need to balance your classes because Florida State's underclassmen ranks aren't loaded with offensive linemen. It just hasn't worked out. So at least a couple of them need to have multiple years, preferably 2, if not 3. I would really like to see that. And it's not an easy ask, but the portal is the portal. It's wild, and you have to take what you can get, too, Depends on who enters. But Florida State's off to a good start. As for the 2026 group, as I mentioned in the open, it is a tremendous in-state haul. And before we go first break, there's the first kid I want to talk about is very important from my perspective for Florida State because he's from the Panhandle. He could play multiple positions, and he is a dominant player. Home run, got to go get him kind of guy for the Florida State Seminoles. Grant Wise out of Pace High School, just outside of Pensacola. It's a young man that I was told about a little over a year ago, but because he's an offensive lineman and I know there's a lot of development, I didn't expect to see a ton on his film and be super excited, but he was pretty good. I just watched his film from his junior season. Wise is a much improved player, played tackle, gets around and wraps around on GT and pulls well, has heavy hands, quick feet, really choppy short steps, plays with power behind his pads. He doesn't play as high as most guys. Matter of fact, his pad level for Wise is pretty darn good, for especially, again, for a prep player that's got another year of eligibility at the high school level, let alone college. So he's a kid that is going to be nationally recruited. And to that point, just as a reference point, Rivals has him number 95 overall in the nation and the number 1 interior offensive lineman. ESPN has him number 2 interior and 138th in the nation. If you have multiple like that, it's pretty good sign. Plays in an area that's got some talent. Obviously, it's Pensacola, so he's going to get some pretty good dudes, but he's burying people. Florida State's a school he's visited. He has offers from across the country, Bama, Florida, Miami, you name it. Grant Wise is one of the best players, interior line in the country. And I think in a pinch, he's a young man that could probably play tackle. Don't prefer it, but he's been coached well enough to this point, and you can tell he enjoys learning the technique. Good for him, by the way, that in a pinch, you can move him. Versatility is key. Look at Florida State really the last 2 years. They've been really burned by injuries. It just happens. Guys got to move around. Wise is one of those players that in a pinch, if he was at center, he could move to guard, vice versa. That's great. And if you really needed him to, he could probably get you by for a game or so at tackle. That's really a valuable point because right now you look at Florida State's roster, you don't even know where guys are going to play. You need some versatility for this season. That's never really going to change. So Florida State's recruiting needs to look at it from that perspective as well. When we come back, we're going to continue on talking about a very long list of Sunshine State prospects in the class of 2026 along the offensive line. Rocket Money can help you with subscriptions that you've got that you don't need, and they can get rid of them for you to save some money. If you've got subscriptions that you didn't even know about, they will help you realize that you're still paying for them, and they can go bye-bye. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps you find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps you lower your bills so you can grow your savings. It brings everything together in one place, whether it's subscriptions, spending habits, or even the goals you want to hit this year. Rocket Money has over 5 million users, and it's helped save over $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year using all of the app's premium features. For anybody out there, one of the best things about it is a subscription tracker. Again, I know that I lose track of subscriptions sometimes, and it's a good way to make sure you save a few bucks. It saved me some money several times checking on this. Make sure you use Rocket Money. So cancel your unwanted subscriptions and find and help your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/lockedon today. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon. Florida State needs 5 or 6 guys in this upcoming recruiting class in 2026 along the offensive line. I've got it set at 5. I just talked about Grant Wise. That's an interior guy. You get a guy like him, I could see 5 being okay. 6 if they don't get as many versatile players, just to be clear on that. Wise kind of helps you. You might be able to mitigate and only take 5 if you can get a great player like him or some of these other guys I'm about to go over. By the way, for this list, this is not in a specific order per se. I know some of them better and some even personally, but I'm not going to try to say one player is the best out of this group or what have you. Keep in mind, offensive linemen, as a general rule, develop a little later. It's harder. That's part of the gig. And this is just some of the guys. This list is going to expand over time. I've only just begun to really look at it and watch film over the last several hours. So here we go. The one guy on this list I know very, very well is this next young man, Canon Pickett. He's out of Tampa. He's a kid that I saw when he was a freshman in high school. He was like 260, 270. His brother, Booker Pickett Jr., is at Miami. He was an edge rusher. They're completely different guys in terms of their personalities and how they're built and how they play. It's wild because they're just 2 years apart. But Cannon's 285, 290, something like that, somewhere in that area. He's very well coached. He plays with California Power 5-on-5. It's the best 5-on-5 organization in the country. My guy, Ray, he's the O-line coach for them. He works at Powerhouse Gym in Tampa for Trench Academy. And Pickett's been working with him for quite a while. His feet, his ability to gauge, if you will, what's going to come from a pass rush is a little more advanced for a high school kid than you're normally going to see. Most think Pickett will play inside, and he might, but I know that he has the feet and the quickness, just from a physical talent standpoint, to play tackle. I've seen him play 10 times if I've seen him once. He is a kid that's very athletic, and he really likes it. He goes across the country with this 5-on-5 team with California Power and goes against kids all over the place. Georgia, Orlando, like I'm going to go to an event in a few weeks in Orlando. There's kids all over the country coming down to that. I'll be there to see him again. But it is a kid that's advanced. I don't know where I would want to play him, but it'll take care of itself. And Pickett's got offers from everybody, pretty much. He's probably got a few that he doesn't have yet, but he'll be a 35-40 offer kid, if I was to guess, when it's all said and done. And he's well-deserved for that. A few of the things that I noticed about him when I watched his film this year from his junior season is how well he stays down low and stays patient when he is in his pass pro. When he gets around the corner, he gets a little anxious sometimes and wanting to bury guys, but that's a good sign that he wants to inflict some punishment. Nothing wrong with that, but he doesn't get out over his feet all the time either. A lot of young linemen, as talented as Canon, they're not as patient as he is. So every now and then he will, but that's a really good football player, and he'll play pretty early wherever he goes. Florida State, Miami, Florida, everybody and their brother will probably be trying to get him on campus over the next few months and set up official visits for later this summer. The next young man I didn't know anything about prior to looking him up, Deron Parks. He's at Cardinal Mooney in Sarasota. It's a program that's been around forever. 6'5", 280-ish, plays tackle. I think he's one of the more underrated guys. Patient, smooth. He's got good length. Can play right or left tackle. I don't really care which one it is. I was surprised. Cardinal Mooney, sometimes they don't play the highest level of competition. Sometimes the big guys for them just kind of lean on guys, stop their feet after contact, and just bury people with physical size. He's got good feet, and he actually utilizes them after contact. I was pretty impressed with him. I think he's a pretty good football player. Park's got quite a few offers. Would not be surprised at all if that's a kid Florida State went after. As I mentioned with Wise, you're talking about a kid that has versatility, and Pickett for that matter. You could never have enough tackles anyway, but you could move him to guard. There's nothing wrong with that. He could get around and pull with his athleticism and his quickness. Good football player, and I expect him to be a national recruit. The next kid is probably the most difficult for me, and I even asked about him with Ray, because Ray just started training this guy in Tampa. Johnny Jones. He's at Berkeley Prep in Tampa. He's a former basketball player, maybe still plays, but like that's his upbringing. 6'6", 6'7". It's just over 300 pounds. Plays a little high. His technique needs a lot of refinement, but his length and his athleticism, it's just like, it's so blatant that it's kind of hard not to at least consider him, even if you're a Georgia or a Michigan or a Texas. Schools got more depth in O-line than the Noles do by a mile because the upside is super high. This is what we call a low floor, high ceiling kid. He might be a 3-year starter for your college program, be a first-round pick. He may never play. Late bloomers like this are hard to project. He's working with Ray, so that's good for him at Trench Academy, and he's working for Dom over there at Berkeley Prep. That's the head coach. He's a great guy. But O-line is a lifelong learning skill. He sometimes gets a little bit too out in front of where he needs to be. Sometimes he doesn't anticipate as well, and he definitely plays high. It's just all technical stuff. But you cannot teach the physical tools. And Johnny Jones is probably one of the higher upside guys in the country at tackle. I just really don't know what to think. I probably should go watch his basketball film, to be honest with you. But the length is like his arms are ridiculously long. I could see him being a left tackle in the SEC. It wouldn't shock me. But that's another kid Florida State, I'm sure, we'll take a look at. Now, as we move over to the next guy, keep in mind, these kids are still 1 year away from high school being over. They got another season to play. So my evaluation is junior film here. Samuel Roseborough, Clearwater, Florida, can play tackle or guard. I really don't care which. The thing I noticed about him immediately, out of this entire list, he might have the heaviest hands. Very good when he comes around the corner, or even if it's just a straight ahead block, he has a really good, powerful punch. He knocks guys back. Every team wants that. Florida State included. Offer list is through the roof. On three has him as the number 43 player in the country. He's top 185 by Rivals, ESPN, On Three, and 24/7. I mean, it's obvious he's a really good player. Listed at 6'5", 285. Clearwater High School, just across the bridge from Tampa. So heavy hands, good balance, good quickness. And the mentality is he wants to play downhill. In a perfect world, I'd rather play him at guard, where he can just beat up on people. But at the same time, he's athletic enough. You want to put him in right tackle, all well and good. That offer list is going to make it interesting to see where Big Sam ends up taking visits this year. He'll probably have a couple out-of-state visits at the minimum. Man, he's a good player. You could make an argument that out of all the guys that can play interior on this list, he has the highest ceiling. Wouldn't shock me if he ended up being a National Football League guy. Next up, another player that's versatile and committed to Syracuse, but he has been to Florida State recently, Javion Cooper. He's at Melbourne Central Catholic. On three has him as the number 181 player in the country. Rivals 4-star. Athleticism is not a problem. 6'4", 295. Agility, runs really well in space. So outside zone, screens, really like what he's got there. He's got really long legs. And he changes directions well in space, which is, especially for an offensive lineman, you get over 250 and you're a long-legged dude, that's not normal. Good for him. He uses his athleticism to his own advantage. And further, he's a young man that will punish you in space. If you're a DB, you better find a way to get on an edge and get around him. If he comes downhill on you and he catches you flush, you're going to go for a ride. This is also a kid that I think could be a pretty good pass protector as a tackle, but I'd prefer that he played guard again because of his athleticism, and he's not quite as tall as some other guys, but again, he's long in the legs, so O-line coach might look at that differently depending on the program. Currently committed to the Cuse, but he has visited Florida State recently. Good football player. Michael Ionata, brother is at Alabama. This kid is out of Calvary Christian in Clearwater, 6'6", 295. Plays tackle in high school. I could see him playing guard. Really, again, wants to play downhill. He's kind of similar in Rosenboro, a kid right down the road from him. Ionata's, another Clearwater area kid. I don't know what the deal is in that area, but they're putting out some linemen. Another guy that's probably worked with Ray. I know his brother did. This is a young man that has been coached, not just in terms of some of the basics, but he's patient when he's going up against a guy smaller than him in space, like he knows he's going to bury him. He's just got to get to him. He'll take his time and not overextend. I love that. And he's also a guy that's calculated. He will time it up to help his offense, or not his offensive line, but his running back behind him. Coming around the corner, he doesn't get out too far in front, and he'll make a play when he needs to that way. I was a little surprised about his rankings. Like On Three and Rivals has him as a 3-star. I thought he was better than that, but to each their own. Next up, Micah Champ Smith. This is one of the best guys in the country. We knew about him early as a freshman. Enormous upside, 300 plus pounds. He's probably 310, 320. Plays at Vero Beach. He's a kid that everybody has him in the top 154. Rivals, 247, On Three, and ESPN. And the latter has him number 46 overall in the nation. So every school in the country wants Champ. Florida State would be fortunate to get him. That's a school that UCF, I know, recruits. And I guarantee you that Coach Herb Hand knows about him now, especially that he's at Florida State. Upside is through the roof here. Pure power, I would prefer that Champ played offensive guard, but he could play right tackle. Mentality, though, is downhill. He was that way at the Under Armour camps. He's that way on film. I don't think there's any doubt that he'll be given a chance to play tackle if that's what he wants at the next level. But I see him as a guard and being a really good one. He is a mauler. When we come back, we're going to finish up with the IMG guys and one guy that's flying under the radar. a little bit right now in the state of Florida as an offensive lineman. That is next on Locked On Seminoles. The NFL playoffs are almost here, but it's not too late to get in on the regular season action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can finish the season strong with $250 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. So you can have an opportunity to go out there and get a W because you can bet on anything from player props like touchdowns, how many yards a guy gets, total number of yards for a team, all kinds of different things. So it is up to you how you go about that. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your chance at $250 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the National Football League. The young man that I noted a moment ago that's under the radar, and I'm not sure what the deal is on this. Maybe it's because he's in Southwest Florida. He's at Fort Myers High. They've had some success over the year. Joel Urban, I actually posted his name or his highlights just a little bit ago on my X. Look, sometimes you can't just teach what God has given somebody. This kid's got superior length, like it's ridiculous. And he's pretty flexible. Needs to play a little lower sometimes, but that's typical for an offensive lineman. His quickness around the edge is tremendous. Can be a pass protector on the blind side or at right tackle. I think if he was at like Orlando Jones, Tallahassee Lincoln, Chaminade Madonna, Miami Norland, something like that, he would probably have more offers. Florida State, is one of the schools that offered him early, but obviously the coaching change. I don't know where his offer stands for any of these kids, but I'd be surprised if hardly anybody on this list didn't get an offer. The length is there. Most importantly, though, to play tackle. Florida State, out of the 5 they need, 3 of them need to at least have some kind of ability to play tackle, by the way, just as a little extra. Urban's the kind of guy you redshirt, maybe plays a little bit, second year on campus, but the third year, take a major step up, play a lot of minutes, kind of like Jalen Early did when he was healthy for Florida State. Then as a 4th and 5th year player, he's a starter for you. That's the normal trajectory for a high school lineman when they go to a Florida State, when they go to a Texas, when they go to a Tennessee. Your first couple of years, if you play, it's a bonus. Then your 3rd year, you make a dent. 4th and 5th year, you're the guy. That's how it works when things go the way they should for a program and a player, not one or the other. Next, IMG is, not surprisingly, loaded with really, really talented players. And to be honest with you, I don't think there's any doubt that it's going to continue that way. But they've got 3 guys right now at minimum. This is just senior class, working up to the senior class, that are good. Carr is one of them. I'm not going to try to pronounce his first name. I know better than to mess it up. But this is a massive kid that can play inside, but he played left tackle quite a bit this year for him at IMG. 330 pounds. He's from the Ocala area. I met him when he was a freshman. I'm like, holy cow, that kid's 15 years old. And great kid. Massive, massive hands. He's got the frame. Really good knee bender. Can play on the edge. I didn't think that was going to be a kid. When I watched his film, I'm like, okay, that's a good sign. He's a kid that's going to be national recruit, and the offers probably across the board. With him being from the Ocala area, I'm curious if Florida State was his favorite school growing up. That would be the most likely. He's 30 minutes from Gainesville and just over 2 hours from Tallahassee. That's something to think about. In addition to that, here's the big thing. This is a young man, because he's played at IMG, he's gotten exposure to schools around the country. So this will probably be a national recruitment, but Carr is a really, really good football player. Next up, Pepe, the offensive tackle we have talked about for years amongst all of us that go to see IMG practices and games. Very athletic, great kid, 6'7", something like that, 290, 300. Easygoing guy, but just has the natural length and physical tools to be a pure left tackle. I guess he was banged up some this year. I didn't even go look at his film, but Carr was playing left tackle when I watched, but don't need it. I've seen him play for a couple of seasons. He can pretty much pick his school from a physical standpoint. And again, personality is there. National recruit. He's been ranked in the top 10 at various points by different services. And I'm not talking about offensive tackle. I'm just talking about player. Alabama, Texas, USC, Michigan, Ohio State. Everybody's going to come after him. I'm curious to see what Florida State's ability to attract a kid like this to get him on campus, and the other kids too at IMG for that matter, how much cachet do you have? I have no idea what they're going to have now. They got a new coach for the offensive line. They've got a new offense in general. They're going to play more downhill, which most O linemen like. But what's Florida State going to be able to offer them that other schools can't? And that's playing time. Florida State for a kid, Pepe could be one of the rare kids. Still don't like it. They could play as a freshman at Florida State. I could see it. But, excuse me, there are just so many guys that are powerful and athletic out there, but not with his length and his height and his demeanor. He could mix in with anybody. I think he's about as good a bet to end up at a major program and be successful, not one or the other, both, of anybody in the country. Really curious to see if Florida State can land him. Finally, and this is a kid I saw accidentally, not this past season, but the one before in 2023, Mitchell Smith. He's at IMG Academy. He was at Picayune Memorial in Mississippi the year before, and I went to see a high school game in Mississippi to see Deuce Knight play, and the team they played was his. And I'm like, who is that guy? As a sophomore, I thought he was the best offensive lineman there, and his brother was going to Mississippi State. He was better than his brother already. And I'm like, this kid's going to be a national recruit. Lo and behold, this past summer, I go to IMG for an event, and I'm like, that's the kid from Mississippi. And he was there, and he had transferred to IMG. I watched him this year, pure power player at guard, athletic as all get out. For a kid his size, 320 plus, really improved his footwork, quicker, shorter, choppy steps, gets downhill, wants to maul people. Could he play right tackle? Smith could absolutely play right tackle. But his mentality, his size, his frame, that's the kind of guy, to be honest with you, that Gus's offense would love to have. You need a power interior player for any offense, but for what Gus wants to do with inside zone to try to wear on teams, Mitchell Smith would be a great addition. I would imagine Mississippi State is the family's choice because that's where his brother went, but they're not very good either. No idea what's going to happen with that program. And again, he's at IMG, just like with Pepe, just like with Carr and any of the other kids. They see a lot of coaches come through. It's not uncommon for me to be on campus at IMG and there to literally be 15, 20 coaches there, from Southern Cal to Syracuse, from Northwestern to Miami. The entire country goes to practices and events there. So Wardley knows what his list is going to be, but Mitchell Smith's a really good football player, and his offer list had already started as a sophomore before he even got to IMG. I expect Florida State and everybody else in the country to come after him. To wrap up, just want to reiterate, this is a very important year. Florida State's got to do well in the portal. I get that with the offensive line. That's not debatable. But they have to get balanced with it. Maybe one or two guys come in that are dudes, don't get me wrong. But they also need multi-year guys from the portal. Excuse me. And they also need a good balance of players in the 2026 offensive line. Tackles, I'd really like to see them get 3 tackles with one of them minimum, preferably 2. They could move inside if need be and vice versa. Versatility. Florida State doesn't know who's going to start this next year, but you want to get out of that. You want to get to the point where, on average, 3 out of your 5 spots are pretty much penciled in for spring ball. Because if you don't get to that point, it becomes a desperate situation every year. Like, this is the worst it's ever going to be this year. They've started good, again, as I noted at the beginning of the show, but you need to get to the point where like 2 O-linemen is all you would need from the portal max. Right now, they need 5 minimum. I mean, it's horrific. But the only way you do that is recruit the high school ranks well, especially if it's in your backyard. I'll go over some kids in Georgia, Alabama, and some other states, some of the kids that Florida State's offered. Once Herb Hands had a chance to go through several different junior days, it's probably more late January to early February information. They got to have the junior days first. But the in-state kids, you're going to check out all of them in some capacity, so I wanted to talk about them today. Again, 5 guys from the 26 class is what I think they need. And if they went out and they got 3 or 4 more in the class after that, that would be like minimum they need, like 2-year haul. To be honest, I think 26 and 27, they need 9 O-linemen from the high school ranks. If one of them's a JUCO kid, that's fine. That's fine. But they've got to restock and get away from the portal from the O-line. You add a guy from the portal to fix a spot, not to begin your building process. Florida State's working backwards right now, and they're paying for it. Hopefully it'll still work out, but they need to get back into the high school ranks and make a dent. And they're fortunate. This is one of the best. 2026 is one of the best groups of offensive linemen in the state in a long time. And again, I've only just started on this. It could be a situation where Florida State, there could be 2 or 3 other kids. I haven't even got to the Miami kids yet. There's probably 1 or 2 in that area. There are going to be some players that visit Florida State in the next few months. It's going to be fascinating to see who they go after. And this is what's fun for me. I love breaking down film. And if you like recruiting synopsis on who, what, when, where, why, and how, I'm going to be your guy all the way through this next June and into early July when all the kids commit. This is what I do here at Locked On Seminoles. And I'll break down other classes and compare them to Florida State's. But it's a great year in state, and it's going to be a lot of fun. Thank you once again for making Locked On Seminoles your first listen each and every day. I truly appreciate you stopping in to talk some Noles with me. Subscribe, like, rate, review, share this podcast, and please come back and see us again tomorrow. We're going to talk some more Noles. We're going to talk about all the different things going on with Florida State football every single day right here on Locked On Seminoles. Everybody have a good one.